Hold on, let me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic podcast. So we're back today with Brother MENJ. Assalamualaikum, bro. How are you?
Waalaikum salam warahmatullah. Yes, I'm good. Alhamdulillah.
Did you see the conversation between Jordan Peterson and Mohammad Hijab?
I did, but only parts of it because it was super long. It was like 1 hour plus, right? So I just watched just a few excerpts. So I didn't watch the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the whole thing, and basically what it seemed like is that Jordan Peterson is basically he is like denying. Actually, you know what? Let's take a look at the video itself, and I'll explain, inshallah. So what we're gonna do today, inshallah, is that we're going to be reacting to this conversation between Jordan Peterson and Brother Mohammad Hijab. The reason why I wanted to do this is because this is so obviously clear that Jordan Peterson is just a sophist. So in case you guys don't know, a sophist is someone who basically who makes kind of like very silly arguments, but he tries to dress those arguments in terms of very like sophisticated language so that his very dumb arguments look smarter than it actually is.
Exactly.
Now, the thing is that it's not always the case, right? Like Jordan Peterson does make like good arguments sometimes. Like, for example, his interview with Kathy Newman, he makes some fantastic, very simple arguments. And those are good arguments. Those are effective arguments. But when he like tries to use or tries to talk to a Muslim, all of a sudden all of that goes out the window, and he's like, "Oh, what's this? What's that?" He becomes like a full-on sophist. So yeah, we'll take a look at what we're talking about, inshallah. And yeah, let's take a look. By the way, do you want to react to the video from Jordan Peterson's channel or Brother Hijab's channel? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear. Yes, brother.
Yeah. Hold on, let me pull out the video. Okay, Mohammad Hijab. Okay, I think it's this one. And let me share the screen. Okay, so can you see the screen? Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna react to only few portions of this entire thing because we're not gonna react to the whole thing.
Yeah, it's 1 hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah. So yeah, you know what? Let me speed it up. And we'll go through it, inshallah. Bismillah.
Yeah, sure. What we're doing here, which is hopefully trying to make peace. Is that enough? We'll see. Yeah, because if it's better than the.
By the way, I don't get it. Why is it so angry? It's like
he sounds like a cartoon character when you speed it up. He sounds like a cartoon character.
All right.
I think maybe you should make it a bit slower so that he actually sounds more. He makes more sense without me trying to not laugh. Okay.
I mean, let's just go through it because it is like a long video. So let's cover as much as we can, and inshallah we'll see.
All right.
Hell. Okay, which we're toying with. I don't mean us. Well, us too. That's for sure. But things are shaky at the moment.
Wait, so I don't get it. So he's saying that like if Muslims and Christians don't talk, we're gonna go to hell. What did he say?
I guess he's saying probably he's referring to hell on earth. I don't know whether this guy actually believes in hell in the year after.
Yeah.
Moment on many fronts, and we have this opportunity in front of us, all of us, to have a very abundant world, right, where everyone has enough, and maybe more than enough, and we're shaky about that. We're not sure that that's acceptable, and we're not sure everybody should have it. We're not sure everybody deserves it, and even ourselves. And we're retreating into our corners in some real sense, and we're not addressing the elephants under the carpet.
Maybe you should just skip this part because this is just the intro. Yeah, this is just the intro.
Yeah.
Just skip this part and move to the next part.
publication of 12 rules, several of Dr. Peterson's online a message to the Muslims. And before I say this, I do want to speak about the important topics, the theological topics.
Okay,
and
so
Slow it down a bit.
here,
Slow it down
yeah,
a bit.
so here, Brother Hijab actually brings up the point about his like nonsense video, where he addressed Muslims, quote unquote, which you addressed, by the way. I think you made a video on it, right?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I also covered it on my channel. So basically, he tried to justify Zionism, and he tries to, promote this, what is it, Abraham Accord, which is an accord between Israel and
No, he
many
was
other
trying
countries.
to push the Abrahamic Accords as a
Yeah.
basis for peace between Muslims, Christians, and Jews. But the problem with
Yeah.
that position is that the Abrahamic Accords is clearly slanted in the Zionist favor. You see.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. Yeah.
It's basically justifying the kind of like the land and the oppression that is taking place.
Exactly, and he doesn't even mention anything about the rights of the Palestinians themselves,
Yeah.
who have been living on that land for thousands of years before the
Yeah.
Israelis came along, in 1948, right?
Yeah. And the thing is that, like, and I talked about it in my video, a lot of Palestinians are living under extreme poverty, and they're basically in open prison, right? Open prison. And
Yeah,
the
in Gaza,
Israelis are-
especially in
yeah.
Gaza. Yeah, especially in
And
Gaza.
the Israelis are expecting us to be okay with it, to be fine with it, right?
Yeah.
And saying,
Exactly.
let's just make peace, let's not make violence. I mean,
Yes, another thing I should point out is that the Jews are actually forbidden to enter the Temple Mount area, or what we Muslims refer to as the Haram Ash-Sharif compound, because in their theology they believe that only the Messiah, when the Messiah finally comes, they don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah, by the way. So when the Jewish Messiah comes, only this Jewish Messiah will give them the permission to enter the Temple Mount. So those Jews who want to force their way onto the Temple Mount or the Haram Ash-Sharif compound, they are actually going against their own religion.
by the way, I find it interesting that they don't believe in Jesus. Then what do they think? Do they think like it's Ben Shapiro? This is the Messiah? They're like, oh.
Yeah, they believe in a Jewish Jewish king who will come and free them
who is
from oppression.
who is this
and-
king?
Not Jesus. That's for
It's
sure.
been like 200
not
years.
Jesus. Not
Yeah,
Jesus.
and
It's
no
someone
one
who has
came.
political power, someone who has influence. But they don't believe it was Jesus. Okay. We Muslims and Christians, by the way, we share this belief that Jesus was the Messiah. Okay.
Yeah.
We have no problems with that. But the Jews, they don't believe this. Okay. They totally
exactly.
reject the idea that Jesus was the Messiah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's continue, inshallah.
all these kind of postmodernism. That will come. But I just wanted to mention this first, because for me, it's just get the elephant out of the room, we can move on.
Sometimes it's just replaced by a slightly smaller elephant.
Well, a smaller elephant is better than nothing.
Yeah.
I was going to say is that it didn't land well with a lot of the Muslim community.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why is that it was seen as condescending, it was seen as kind of patronizing. What was your intention of this video?
To start a dialogue stupidly and badly, because that's how you have to start. We talked already about the idea of tolerance, and I'm actually not here to be tolerant. Because tolerance sort of presumes that I know what I'm doing and you guys don't, but I'll put up with you anyways. And
Okay, so I feel like you have to read between the lines a little bit. Now, I'm sure that Jordan Peterson's fans are going to be like, you're strawmanning him, etc., etc. But the thing is that the guy has made his position clear. He clearly does support Zionism, or the Zionist position. So I don't think it's unfair for me to kind of like try to steelman his position. So here he is already assuming there's like some big conflict between Muslims and non-Muslims, which is not true. I mean, I have lived with non-Muslims my whole life. I went to school with them. I went to colleges with them. There's not like big conflict between the Muslims and non-Muslims, or even the Muslim war with the non-Muslim war, right? We don't have like a caliphate, right? We don't have any power, or in a meaningful sense.
Exactly.
But he already puts this picture in his audience's mind that there's this big conflict between these people and us, right? And this is a straw man. This is a misrepresentation. That's not true.
I get the feeling that somehow Jordan Peterson has never gone to a Muslim nation, or he has never traveled throughout the Muslim world.
Yeah.
He just probably listens to news from Fox or from CNN or any of those maybe Sky News. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
He probably has never actually traveled throughout the Muslim world. He should actually go out to the Muslim world, not just talking to Muslims in Canada, but to actually go to a Muslim majority nation and mix around with the people and learn the culture. By the way, each Muslim nation has different culture. So in Bangladesh it's different, in Malaysia it's different, in the Middle East it's different. So but he should just travel throughout the Muslim lands and see for himself how Muslims behave.
Yeah, and another thing is that Muslim world is so diverse. Like, for example, we have so many diversity in terms of ethnicity.
Exactly.
in terms of like cultural identity, right?
Yep.
So like to make it seem like somehow there's this big conflict, and the funny thing is
Exactly.
that he didn't define what do you mean exactly that there's like this big conflict, right? What do you mean conflict with who? Like who is fighting here? Like are you talking about the Jews? Are you talking about like the Hindus? Like who, right? Because if you say like there's this big conflict between east and west, okay, so the who's the conflict with? Is it with the people? Is it with like some kind of ideology? Is it liberalism? If it's liberalism, then are you yourself opposing liberalism, or at least left version of liberalism? So it's just vague nonsense, right? He doesn't define anything, and so when you corner him, he basically just shifts his goalpost that changes the argument. And this is something we Muslims have to keep in mind when engaging with people like this, because they're very they're very shifty, you know. Let's
No
continue.
doubt about it. Yes, I agree. with
I don't
you.
actually think I know what I'm doing exactly. And so I think while you might have something to teach me, and so it's not so much tolerance as I would say, hopefully something approximating an expression of reasonable humility, which is, well, first of all, we occupy the same space. And as far as I'm concerned, it'd be better if we got along. And we've all had our own revelations, you know, personally and let's say socially. And we don't know how to integrate those revelations. And that's rough, that's hard. And so I'm here to listen. And the message was preposterous in some sense, although not much more so than the message I made to Christians, which I wouldn't say was exactly flattering. And, you know, I thought it would probably ruffle some feathers, but I thought it might also initiate a dialogue, or at least further it. And that has happened. You know, I mean, certainly there were many people who were irritated at me and thought that I was being condescending, and I wasn't trying to be, because I do have a lot of people who are paying attention to my lectures around the world on the Islamic side, which is quite surprising to me, especially with regard to the attention that's being given to the biblical lectures. And I don't take any of that for granted. And I wasn't trying to either capitalize on it or interfere with it. I was trying to do the next stupid thing that might move things forward a bit. And it's actually worked, I would say. Well, first of all, I am here, and I know that's not a direct consequence of that message, but at least it didn't break it. And there have been many.
Again, like non-Muslim intellectuals interacting with Muslims is nothing new. Like he's acting like somehow like this just happened, like it has never happened in the past. Like our scholars have debated Christian scholars. Like even Qayyum wrote books against criticizing, like I don't know what's Chas father's name.
Exactly. We
Saint
even
of-
had books. We even had books in Muslim Al Andalus, right? Written books against the Jews. Okay, against the Jews, the Christians.
Yeah.
Even there are books like, for example, like Ibn Khaldun writing about India.
Yeah.
So you know, so there are many. Actually, there are many. Sorry, not Ibn Khaldun. Ibn Battuta. Okay, he traveled throughout. You know who Ibn Battuta was, right? He was a traveler. So he traveled throughout the world, and he went to India, and he actually wrote. He was the first, you would say, the first Muslim anthropologist, okay, in the world. Okay, and he was the first person in the world to write about the culture of South Asia. Okay, the Hindus especially. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I find it like kind of interesting, and the thing is that it kind of condescending, because I understand like why he's might be saying this, because he's trying to reach out to his like kind of very conservative fan base who might think that way. So I can see it from that perspective, but still, like he should be honest in the sense that I know that what he should have said is that I know that there's been communication before, but I feel like we need to constantly engage so that our relationship gets better or something like that. But to paint it like as if like there's this big conflict, which is a straw man, and then as if like this is the first time Muslims and non-Muslims are engaging, none of this is true. But that's how it come across as. Now, obviously, I don't know if that's exactly what he means. It could be that I'm just misinterpreting it, but it just seems that way, right? So let's continue.
Many other Muslim groups who've reached out to me in a serious way, at least in part because of that. And so I think we have to understand that we're going to stumble into each other a fair bit if we actually try to talk, because of all the elephants and the snakes that are lurking under the carpet. And I think it's a very good thing to get them out in the open. I'm a very agreeable person, as it turns out. Yes, I know it's to my detriment, but
I wouldn't guess, to be honest, that you're very agreeable.
Yes, it's one of my major character flaws, but I don't like conflict at all. But the reason I would say I'm prone to engage in it is because sometimes what's under the carpet needs to be revealed, because it's going to cause a lot of trouble if it just sits there and broods and multiplies. And so here's one of the advantages of disagreeable people having them around, because they will haul things up for inspection that everyone else might be loath to confront. The downside is, well, you might do that too often, and that's a hard thing to get right. So I'm not here in a spirit of tolerance. I'm here in a spirit of ignorance. And I'm hoping, see, the other thing I've been thinking through, and you guys can tell me what you think about this, is it seems that in the situation we're in now, sort of globally speaking, that it would be useful for people of religious faith to note that there are other people of religious faith with whom they have much in common, one of them being religious faith. And that
again,
they are.
Look at the condescending way he describes the Muslims. So basically, he's already assuming that Muslims don't think that we have anything in common with like non-Muslims. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? The Quran itself mentions the people of the book. that we have similarities, that we
Yes,
believe in
that's right.
Jesus, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
like this
In
is
fact,
very,
the Quran calls us to come to tell the people of the book to come to common terms between
yeah,
us and them, right?
yeah,
That we
yeah,
should none but the one true God. So this is the
yeah.
common terms.
Yeah, and another thing is that like if you read like the tafsir or like Tabari and like uh, even Qayyum and like Imam Qurtubi's tafsir, you'll see sometimes they will even quote like the Bible passages and like to like make
Yes,
comparative religious analysis, right? So the thing is
that's
that
right.
we have been like in dialogue for like thousands of years. Like it's not like all of a sudden we're not now interacting. The thing is that he is making it seem like somehow the Muslim world is like this Africa,
Somehow
like this
I think he thinks
tribe
that
somewhere,
somehow he thinks
Antarctica,
only
or in hills
yeah
somewhere that have never met like non-Muslims. This is the first time we're coming across them, where there's these like savages that have never seen civilization. So it's like, that's basically how he's painting it as. But the thing is that this thing have been done. Like we
yes
know about other faiths, so we have written books on it. We have been in dialogue for thousands of years. Like Islam is not this like alien religion. Like Islam, as a matter of fact, Islam has been in the West for a very long period of time, like the Ottoman Empire
yes
or like
exactly
other
exactly
empires. Like,
yep
and there are Muslim majority white Western nations, and it's not just one or two. There are plenty of them. There are white Muslims. So like I don't understand like this
that's right.
attitude that comes from him.
He doesn't seem to understand what being a Muslim means or what the culture is.
Brother Drill
Oh,
Dog
right,
says,
Brother
Assalamu
Vil
alaikum.
Dogs.
Walaikum salam.
Walaikum salam warahmatullah, Brother Vil. Thank you for coming to our stream.
Yeah. You're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dr. Peterson, he doesn't seem to understand. As I said before, I think the problem with him is that he doesn't really understand the Muslim world. He only thinks he understands them simply by watching news or reading books about us, but he doesn't actually, go down to talk to us, as in going to a Muslim nation and, make sure the people learn the culture.
Yeah.
He doesn't do any of this. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is that someone his caliber should study about what the Muslim scholars have said in the past and how we have engaged. Like there are excellent YouTube channels that does talk about this, like the history of the Muslims and Christian interactions, debate and discussion. Like these things have happened. It's like some random thing that's just happening now. So I feel like maybe he should like study these things more, and that way, like because
I mean,
otherwise,
technically speaking, he's supposed to be more sophisticated than our brother Andrew Tate, but it seems that
yeah,
Tate has more acumen than him. Okay, in
yeah,
perceiving the truth. Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. That's yeah, that's continuation.
Are also confronting, as people of religious faith, a world that is attempting to, let's say, shake itself free of that. And so it isn't exactly obvious to me that it's a great time for people of religious faith to concentrate on their differences, given that there are perhaps more important elephants to address, let's say, or fish to fry. And so I'm very ignorant about the Islamic tradition, and I'm trying to rectify that. It's very difficult to step outside your own culture and to
Okay, so this is also not true. So basically, what he's saying is that religious differences should be put aside. Why? Like these differences can either mean hellfire or heaven, right? These things are extremely important. You can't just put something like this aside. Now, obviously, I understand what he's talking about. He's talking about to fight a common enemy, like the liberals, kind of leftists, and all this kind of like LGBTQ loving like preachers and imams, right? I understand that, and of course, on these points, we fully agree with them, right? But the thing is that being said, the truth is the truth, the haq is the haq, and you can't just ignore or sweep it under the carpet, right? Because we want what's best for the Christian people, we want what's best for the Jewish people, and we believe that this is the truth. And if it's the truth, then of course we're gonna call to them, we're gonna engage with them, we're gonna tell them to come, embrace Islam. And of course, if they don't agree, then to you your religion, to me my religion, right? So to act as if like this is not important is I find that very disingenuous. What do you think?
yes, yeah. I mean, I really don't know what to say at this point because you see, Jordan Peterson, he seems to try to empathize with the Muslims. At the same time, he tries to ignore the Muslims. He doesn't seem to understand. It's like a contradiction because on one hand, he says that he wants to understand the Muslim position. On another hand, he just simply dismisses the Muslim position and tries to impose his own understanding upon the
Yeah,
Muslims. So, if I don't know whether you noticed this, but this is what I saw.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's a contradiction. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, let's continue.
really understand someone else's. And I'm under no illusions, I hope, about the degree of understanding that I've managed, but I have tried to understand what we might share in common. And that's crucial. And so certainly one of the ideas that we all share in common on the religious front, let's say, is that there is an ultimate unity that should be placed above all else. And so that's part of the great monotheistic tradition. And I'm going to speak mostly as a psychologist rather than as, say, an advocate of the Christian tradition, because it is obvious to me that
Let me kind of push back a little bit on that point, because you're an individual, like, obviously in your news book, you're talking about categorically about precision. And I would say you're an individual that is very precise. You're categorized, like, if I was to say anything, I would say that you're an individual that's scrupulously meticulous in exactitude and, I don't know, meticulousness or whatever, yeah? So you speak and you think about what you're going to say before you say it. That's what you're known for. In fact, if someone says something which is kind of off the market, but you pull them up for it, right? And
usually because I don't understand it then.
Yeah, no, for example, like Kathy Newman interview, like the assumptions and the questioning that she had when she was questioning, you pulled her up on it, and that's why it became so popular. The discussion was so popular. And you're a clinical psychologist. So what I was going to say is that, for example, if I was to make a video, right, I say it's a message to to white Canadians or something, yeah, and I said,
it's hard to talk to them.
And I say, look, sensitively, why don't you reach out to some Russians, or heaven forbid, reach out to Black Africans or First Nation people, whatever it may be. How do you think the community of white Canadians?
Why don't you pause this for a moment?
Well, it was you.
Yeah,
well, you're pretty disagreeable, so you probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look at Hijab, he's wearing the Muslim Western dress, right? Very
Yeah,
nice,
yeah.
very nice. I like it. But I was thinking when I saw this, I was thinking, of our earlier conversation earlier. I wonder what those people would say about him. No, just a thought. Okay, yeah, continue.
Yeah.
We get bit back a lot.
Yeah, but exactly.
I don't. It's hard to say until you do it. I mean, I have reached out to other communities. Let's say I did an interview with a friend of mine who's a Native American carver who lives on the West Coast, and I'm not very happy with the narrative that's being promoted in Canada, which is that the European settlement of Canada is best viewed as genocidally colonial. And having said that, my friend, this carver, was in a residential school in Canada, and the residential schools were put forward by the government.
Yeah, and that's true. Oh, what do you mean? Like, I don't like this narrative. Like, for example, if I don't like gravity, that doesn't make gravity false, right? I mean, like, is it the case that a lot of kind of like genocidal things happened under the colonial regime? Yes. So, like, I don't like understand like this attitude of like, oh, I don't like this. I mean, of course, it's uncomfortable, right? But the thing is that the truth is the truth, and the haq is the haq. And the thing is that you can't just deny history. And the thing is that people who still live nowadays, they still have to live with that fact, with the fact that these people have colonized us and basically belittled us in a lot of ways. Our ancestors, right, were colonized by these people, and we still have to live with that. I mean, Bangladesh or the Indian subcontinent, I don't know if you know, there was a massive starvation that happened in this region, and millions of people died. And the reason they died because all of the food was sent to these British armies, right? And we had nothing. And as a matter of fact, it was so bad, and you can look this up. It was basically the Bengal famine. If you type in Google Bengal famine, you will find this. And it was so bad that you would really literally find piles of bodies in the streets wherever you go. And these people have all died of starvation. Like, that's how bad it was. And one of the British...
That's horrible, brother. That's really horrible.
One of the British kind of like officers, when he came here, he was so disgusted by this. He immediately wrote a letter to like fix this situation, because that's how many people they died, because they didn't care. Like, they came here for the resources. And yeah. How about Malaysia? Do you guys
the thing about history is that overall the British treated us very well. Okay, it was only the colonizers that came before us. Okay, so the Portuguese came when the Portuguese first came. I think I talked about Malacca before. We had an empire called the Malacca Empire. It controlled most of the region, most of the territories in this region. Okay, and it was a Muslim empire. And then in 1511, the Portuguese came and destroyed it. So of course they raped and killed and pillaged the Muslims in Malacca and forced converted most of them, the women, enslaved the women and married them. So until today, we actually have some descendants from these people who are not Christian, unfortunately. Okay, and then the Dutch came. Okay, the irony is that the Dutch were Christian and also the Portuguese are Christian, but they were fighting each other over control of Malacca. So the Dutch came and took over Malacca. Okay, they made war against their Christian brothers, the Portuguese, and killed the Portuguese and took over the city. This is in 1680 something, I don't remember. So the Dutch came, but they only controlled the city, so they didn't do much to the Muslims. They were basically the Dutch, they keep to themselves. Okay, and then finally the British came. The British, they were a bit more diplomatic. They actually made diplomatic ventures to the sultans here. They tried to give gifts and say, okay, we will allow you to rule your state, but you must give us trading rights. You must give us your economic rights. So essentially, it was the British that controlled the economy and controlled the administration, but the sultans were allowed to rule. Okay, so and then of course World War II happened. The Japanese came. The Japanese killed a lot of Malaysians. Okay, Muslims, non-Muslims. Okay, and then the British, after the World War II, the British came back, and then they wanted to set up a grand plan called the Malayan Union. So this Malayan Union will integrate the territories into the British Empire, and direct control will come from the Home Office in London. Okay, and the sultans will lose their power. And because they wanted to implement this plan, that was why the Malays, rose up and fought against the British. But prior to this, we did not have any problems with the British. Okay, we were actually content under the British rule, and right until that point. So we don't actually have the same experience with other countries. Okay, with other countries under colonization. Yeah. In Indonesia, it's a bit different. In Indonesia, there was war. There was a bloody revolution. They were controlled by the Dutch. So the Dutch, when the Dutch ruled the Indonesian territories, they were very oppressive towards the Indonesians.
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is that the history of colonization is extremely brutal. And the thing is that there is a difference between, and this is something that needs to be clarified, there's a difference between conquest, rightful, just war conquest, versus colonization.
Exactly.
Because the purpose of colonization or colonizing a territory is to get the resources. That's what the main purpose is.
That's what the British did. Okay, that's
Yeah.
what the British did to Malaysia.
It is not to actually expand your empire.
Yes.
Because if you expand the empire, then then you have to invest in that area, and
Exactly.
you have to better the people's lives, the natives of those people's lives, right?
That's right. That's right.
But the colonization is opposite of this, because the purpose of colonization is to get resources, and if you take resources, obviously it's going to be bad for the natives, right?
Yes,
So there's
that's
a
right.
huge difference between colonizing a place
Exactly.
versus
Versus
conquering
expanding an empire.
that place
expanding
and
your
taking
empire.
control.
Because when you expand an empire, you can still have an autonomous. I mean, that particular territory which you have conquered, you can still hand it over to the natives to rule that particular territory. It's just
Basically,
that
you're taking over and giving them security.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like this. When the Turks took over the Ottomans, let us talk about the most recent caliphate, the Turks. So the Turks took over the Middle East, they took over Egypt and so on. I mean, the Egyptians still had a government. Okay, they had I think his name was Muhammad Fatah. I don't remember, but this person was reporting directly to the Caliph in Istanbul. Okay, in Constantinople. So even though the Egyptians, they managed their own affairs, they still had to answer to the Ottoman Caliphate. Okay, but essentially, the Ottoman Caliphate does not have any actual say over. I mean, in terms of administration, okay, over Egypt, because it's still managed by the locals. It's just that Egypt is under the Ottoman rule. So the difference with colonization is that colonization, not only do they administer you, they give you, they give you power, but only in name. They also take your resources. Okay, they take your economic resources, and all the resources are sent back to the land where they originate from. And they don't give a single thing back to the land which they took it from. That's the problem.
Yeah. So basically, it's a type of like massive slavery. So
Exactly.
You're turning this entire land of people, your slave, and
Yes.
you're just taking for them, and you're giving them some scraps so that they can maybe survive. But even sometimes they don't even do that. Like, for example, what happened in the Bengal region here. So yeah, this is all like bloody history, and like we can go on for all day, but like let's just continue. So basically, he's just whitewashing. What brother Drill was says. Same guy who said damning thing about the prophet is now wants to whitewash and don't want to admit their crimes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, well, to be fair to him, he did take back what he said about the Prophet Salam. So let's give him that. Okay, let's grant him that. Okay, at least he admitted his mistake in calling the Prophet names, and he he rescinded back. I think that was in the previous interview with Hijab, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, let's continue.
Government in an attempt, and other institutions in an attempt to separate the indigenous children from their families and then socialize them rapidly according to European norms. And there was some positive motivation for that, and sometimes that helped and worked. But one of the things that did happen.
What part of positive motivation there is to separate children from their parents? Like
Nothing positive about it.
I don't understand.
I don't understand his logic. What is the positive thing about this?
Was that some schools were, let's say, invaded by people of a pronounced pedophilic and sadistic bent, and my friend ended up in one of those schools, and his life was so dreadful that you can't even hear about it without serious emotional damage. And so I went forward with that discussion, and it was very contentious, but it went very well, and it told a story that was true and needed to be told. And so you step into foreign territory at your peril, that's for sure. But and it was relatively difficult for me to arrange for this to be a possibility. But my thought again.
Wait, what is
and
saying?
my friend ended up in one of those schools, and his life was so dreadful. Were put forward by the government in an attempt, and other institutions in an attempt to separate the indigenous children from their families and then socialize them rapidly according to European norms. And there was some positive motivation for that, and sometimes that helped and worked. But one of the things that did happen was that some schools were, let's say, invaded by people of a pronounced pedophilic and sadistic bent, and my friend ended up in one of those schools, and his life was so dreadful that you can't even hear about it without serious emotional damage. And so I went forward with that discussion, and it was very contentious, but it went very well. And
So basically what he's saying is that, like, oh, bro, are you there? Okay, so basically what he's saying is that he has like this Native American friend, and he has this Native American friend, and he suffered a lot under colonization. He went to this school where he was probably abused or something like that. That's what I'm getting. And he says, he had this conversation, but let's see where he takes this.
it told a story that was true and needed to be told. And so you step into foreign territory at your peril, that's for sure. But and it was relatively difficult for me to arrange for this to be a possibility. But
because the thing is, he's gonna now justify the conquest or colonization of these people. Let's see how he spins this.
my thought again, because I'm trying to look for what we have to offer each other rather than what divides us, I thought it was worthwhile.
In an economy as volatile as this one, it's important to have control when making a big purchase like a new car.
And I also push back on the point that it's the foreign culture, because I think that Islam, you mentioned this in lecture as well, that Islam has now become part of Western culture.
Yeah, that's the open question. As we noted in the introductory remarks, it's like, well, is Islam part of the West? We're kind of having the same discussion about Russia. And so,
And I also push back on the point that it's the foreign culture, because I think that Islam, you mentioned this in lecture as well, that Islam has now become part of Western culture.
yeah, that's the open question. As we noted in the introductory remarks, it's like, well, is Islam part of the West? We're kind of having the same discussion about Russia in some real sense.
True,
That's really
true.
going well at the moment.
Yeah, so there's that part. But what was it?
Did you notice his daughter with apostate prophet? Bro, are you there? Can you hear me? Bro, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. The brother Virdox is referring to Mikhaila.
Yeah.
Mikhaila Peterson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see
Yeah,
her...
but you cannot blame her because it was actually you cannot blame her because it was Apusi who egged her on and pushed her to answer in a certain way. So I don't blame Mikhaila for being deceived. Okay. It's Apusi being an asshole and trying to plant ideas into her head, and she answered in her typical Western manner, of course.
Yeah.
Okay? So you have to admit one thing: Apusi is such a devious, manipulating figure. Okay, he likes to manipulate people into saying certain things about Islam, and he did it very well. He does it. He tried to do the same to me, but it didn't work.
Yeah, basically it's just cherry picking nonsense and throwing at people, thinking it's gonna stick, except it doesn't stick.
Exactly.
Is that if there is a bloody history of Western colonialism, and it's almost undeniable. Like, for example, look at Algeria, for instance. Algeria, when it was annexed by France,
there's no dispute.
in what happened there. So I'll give you one example of many. The Spanish colonialism of Latin America, for example. There are things that happened. And I'm not saying that's things that happened only just on the Western front.
Yeah.
There are things that happened on the Muslim front as well, of course.
This is true.
Yeah, no doubt about it, right? I'm not going to stand here and defend the Muwahhidun who came and were very intolerant to Jews and Christians and kicked them out of their homes and stuff like that.
Okay, so I feel like Brother Hijab is kind of, again, equivocating the two things between, conquest and colonization. Like, if you look at the Muslim Empire, like most of the Muslim Empire, they conquered areas and gave protection to those native people and then invested in those areas. Okay, like that is not colonization, because again, like colonization, and even the early Roman Empire or the Persian Empire, they would conquer a land and then they would give protection in that land, and sometimes they would invest in that land, right? So it's not the same thing as colonization, where you're coming into this foreign country and you're the minority and at the same time, being a minority, you're taking all their resources from them, and then benefiting your own empire and giving them nothing. But so these two things are not the same, because in Islam we have to give, like, you have to rule in a way where, because there's a hadith by Umar radiallahu anhu, where Umar radiallahu anhu, he saw a very poor non-Muslim, and the first thing he did was that he said that we have not been just with you. So he took money from Baitul Mal, or like the treasury, and the first thing he did was help the man, because the thing is that in Islam we're taught to love our neighbors, be kind and just to the the citizens. So obviously this is not the same as colonization, because in colonization people are not viewed that way. You want to add something? Well, can you hear me?
No, I'm fine. No, go ahead.
Yeah. Did you want to add something?
No, I'm okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Continue with the stream. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
In Spain as well, in fact. So the point is, I feel like, I don't know, as a psychologist, I think my question would be to you, don't you think it is of any benefit to be concessionary in this regard? Like, to start off the discussion by saying...
Now, this is, to be fair, like, this is a little bit of criticism to Brother Hijab, which is like, I don't think he should have made this equivocation, because obviously there's a huge difference between Muslim army conquering other lands as a part of conquest versus British or like European colonization, where European colonization was driven by this idea of making profit. It was driven by the idea of making profit, where the idea of conquest was that there was no border. And people were fighting anyway, and they didn't have any treaty, and we were simply expanding our territory and giving protection to this land. And we wanted to, early Muslims, they wanted to spread, Islam as a religion and as a system, and to remove oppression from this other land as well. And we oftentimes, what Muslims did is that they also invested in these areas. They built like churches, or like they built like buildings and institutions that helped non-Muslims as well as Muslims. So the two things are not the same.
Like, we know that these are things that could cause resentment.
Yes.
Because, like, for example, I know a lot of Algerian people, and this is very clear in their historical memory.
Yes.
And the accusation would be that the West have colonial amnesia here. They are not taking into account what they've done. I'll be honest with you,
they don't even know how. Well, okay. So, yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, look, here's how I would address that psychologically. In many of the mythological stories that I've read, there is the motif of the evil uncle. And so, for example, in the ancient Egyptian cosmology, there were four deities, four central deities, although a host of associated deities. And one of them was Osiris, who was the deity of the state. That might be a good way of thinking about it. And he had an evil brother, Seth, who was always conspiring in the background to overthrow the state and to establish his own rules, say, based on power. And the Egyptians, this is thousands of years ago, had figured out by that point, because their society was quite large, that there was something in the social structure itself that posed a threat to the structure. And that was the tendency for the structure and its leaders to become willfully blind, and for conspiratorial powers or patterns that would use resentment and the desire for power to overthrow that. They thought of Osiris as willfully blind and Seth as an eternal danger, and that's true. But there's another element to the evil uncle too, which is that in some real sense, and it's a very difficult thing to sort through morally, all of us walk on blood-soaked ground, because human history is, in some regards, a nightmarish catastrophe, and some of that's just because life was so difficult.
Yes, it's true that all of us walked on blood-soaked ground, but some grounds are more bloody than others. Like, no one can deny, like no historian in the planet will deny that British or like European colonization was way worse than any type of conquest or colonization in the past. And like, no one's going to say that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, even like ask any like reputable historian who have studied this topic, and they will tell you that like the bloody history that of colonization and the legacy that it left is not the same. It's just not the same. Like, the thing is that usually what happens
today, until today, the countries that were under colonization are still feeling the effects of colonization. So that just shows how bad it was. Okay.
Yeah, and the thing is that when Muslims like came to India, if anything, India became united and became more wealthier.
Yeah, exactly.
Or when Muslims conquered Baghdad, what happened to Baghdad? Baghdad became like a beacon of civilization.
Yes, it's become a city of knowledge. Everyone from the Western world were going to Baghdad just to learn, to study, to gain the knowledge. It's just like how Muslims today go to the West, go to London, go to the US to study, to further their studies. It's the same thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing is that like even non-Muslims benefited from this. Like you have like Jewish scholars like Maimonides, is that his name? And other scholars who came from that period. So clearly, you can clearly see that like There's brought prosperity both to the Muslims and non-Muslims. But can you say the same about like the colonization? No, the people who are colonized are in a terrible state. They were backwards now. like most of these countries are now backwards. They went backwards. They went financially bankrupt.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, the two things are not the same.
But it's also because people did unbelievably cruel and malicious and deceptive, committed unbelievably cruel and atrocious and deceptive acts. And so we're all stuck with this problem that here we are.
Even to be fair, even with like non-Muslim like conquest, for example, the conquest of like the Roman Empire or the Persian Empire, like the thing is that they invested in those areas, the same way the Muslims invested in those areas, but the colonizers didn't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Relative peace and harmony so far, although we seem to be doing everything we can to try to disrupt that at the moment. And part of the price that's being paid for that is an endless litany of historical catastrophe. And then we all have to face up to, well, what does that mean for us in terms of our individual responsibility? And how do we construe ourselves in our society in light of that fact? And we could go back and forth continually about whose historical atrocities were worse. And that's a rough contest because, the devil is definitely in the details there. And then it also brings up the other problem, which is, well, when the Spaniards went to Central America, a lot of the bloodshed they produced, the death they produced was actually a consequence of the introduction of disease. So that took out about 95% of the native population in the Western Hemisphere. And then the conquistadors were, well, maybe they weren't the finest representatives of the highest flowering of Western civilization. We don't know to what degree they were.
I mean, there are plenty of diseases that happened with like conquest. Like when Muslims conquered like Syria, there were diseases, but Syria still became an economic powerhouse under the Muslim rule, right? I mean, they still become part of this empire, right? So that's not a good argument to say that, some people just died of diseases. Yeah, so what? You guys still didn't do enough to like uplift those people. Like you still took their resources away from them to benefit like your own empire instead of making that part of your empire.
Yeah, I mean, the colonizers, they were never interested in developing the land that they took over. They were just interested in taking the resources and take it back to their country to develop their country, not to develop the land that they took it from. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Were the sort of thugs that couldn't get along at home and went out adventuring. And even if I say attempted to take full responsibility for that, I'm not sure what it would mean, because I suspect I have a lot more in common with you people in the modern world than I do with Spanish conquistadors from 300 years ago. Now, I'm not saying I bear no responsibility for the bloodshed of the past, but I would say we all bear that responsibility. And that's something like the conception of original sin.
Yeah, that's a difference. But to be honest, I would disagree with that point. Like as a Muslim, there's a verse in the Quran that says, one soul should not bear the responsibility of someone else's actions.
Yeah, well, that's the other ethical complication. It's like, can you call me out in relationship to the atrocity of the past? But it's complicated, right? Because at the same time, you do say, and I don't mean you personally, but we can say things like, well, the West is not bearing sufficient responsibility for its colonial past. And so at some level, that kind of devolves down to the individual.
So let me kind of rephrase it then. I think that's more of a left-wing criticism. It's like reparations and affirmative action programs. I'm not advocating any of that. And not even believing in that, to be honest with you.
Nor me.
Yeah, so what I was putting as an alternative to that is there is this kind of, I would call this maybe an Orientalist and neo-Orientalist narrative, which states that Islam is incapable of X, Y, Z, tolerance, whatever it is. And look at what's happened in Islamic history. You've got all of these deaths and you've got all of these kinds of things that are happening comparative to what we have in the West. And what we're saying is that let's look at what you have in the West, because liberalism was an ideology that was started in the 17th century. Like, really it was crystallized, with John Locke and all those kind of things then. And after liberalism was established, in fact, the constitution and the documents of founding fathers and stuff like that were based on the liberal secular principles. Even after that, you had Napoleonic Wars. Even after that, you had colonialism continue, you had slavery continue until 1867, whatever it was, the American Civil War ended. So what we're saying is that this picture of history, that the West is best, basically, this idea, because our ideology can fix all problems, it's not reasonable when you look at the historical records. I mean, one scholar called Naveed Sheikh actually done a piece, it's called Body Count, and he was counting the amount of people that died in each.
So basically what Brother Hijab is trying to argue is that because they have this idea, right, the right wing, like kind of like these conservative figures, is that West is the best, right? But when we look back at history and how they treated like people of other areas, West is not so best. So the point here is that this narrative is clearly false, right? It's the idea of American exceptionalism, or like, I don't know, like British exceptionalism, or we're more civilized than these folks who are still living in poverty. This is a false narrative.
Yeah, European supremacy.
Yeah. So and that's basically what it's calling out, because even if you say for the sake of argument, we didn't kill all these people and all this just happened by political and this and that, fine, no problem. But then why are these people still living in poverty? Why are they still suffering? Like, because you took all their wealth from them and you benefited yourself without giving them anything. Where if you look at the Muslim world, the thing is, the Muslim build mosques, they build like charities, like they build schools, universities, like, and we became one with the people. Like the Muslims really became one with the people. They became part of the culture. They brought their culture with them. where
Yes.
that's not the case in the most of this kind of like European colonizer history. So what Peterson was trying to say, or downplaying this whole the whole thing, and Hijab just undermined all of that by mentioning
Yeah.
this.
Civilization, and he put the Western civilization is the highest. Because you have things like World War I and World War II. These things were World War I and World War II were nationalistic conquests. They were not religiously inspired. Well, you can argue to what extent World War I was religiously inspired, but certainly Islam was not a main feature of the 30 million people that died in World War I, or however many people died in World War II. So the point is I was saying is that, and obviously you've got concepts in the West like manifest destiny, and which I think every single president of the United States of America believed in, westward expansion, these kind of things. But the point is that it's a proposition that the ideology of the West can fix our problems. This is what we have an issue with, because what we're saying is that if we look at the historical record, there is no evidence of that. In fact, what's shown us is that there's more bloodshed. Individualism has caused more death. Like, with all due respect, I don't think that you do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how did liberalism help the Muslims? How? All it did is take us backwards.
Exactly.
Like, it didn't help us economically. It definitely didn't help us like financially. Like the Muslim countries are more of a mess than they were before.
Yeah,
So,
definitely
like-
didn't help anything in terms of development for the Muslim
And
world.
if you wanna talk about like some of the like economic kind of like benefits, they happen in China, and they happen under communism. So this has nothing to do with like what political ideology you follow. It's more to do with the people working hard, doing business with others. So it's not happened despite of it. But if you look at like the early kind of like early history in Islam definitely went to places and then uplifted those people. Like, for example, the Arabian tribal culture was clearly not as advanced as it was before the Muslims, then after the Muslims, when they were all united. Because after they were all united, they became a force to reckon with. And so clearly, like, you can clearly see that like Hijab is right, because you can clearly see that these ideas did not help Muslims, and yet they're still trying to push these nonsense ideas. You want to add something? Are you there, bro?
No, I'm good. No, I'm good. Go ahead. No, nothing much to add. You've already pretty much said what I wanted to say.
Okay.
I'm not saying everything's bad about it, but when you have a society deplete of a communitarian ethic, is bereft of a communitarian ethic, then you can have these issues. And so these are conversations, and I think you're moving towards communitarianism. In your book, you're talking about institutions and these kind of things, and the respect for tradition and these kind of things. I'm not sure if I'm reading you correctly, but these are the kinds of conversations I think we need to have. But on that point, I think, I don't want this to be interrogative. And
I just want to interject
please,
one thing, because I think it's important. I think, Jordan, you're very kind, and I understand. I also watched the message to Muslims, and I thought there were some problems with it, definitely. But when you said there's an elephant in the room that I want to address, my mind immediately went to videos I've seen of you with some of your friends in the street, and suggesting violence and suggesting aggressive actions against other communities, which in the West is something that, let's say, in Canada, people don't do that.
Because Christians never advocate for violence against other communities, right, bro? This guy's a Christian, by the way.
Sorry, what you were saying? Sorry, I was a bit distracted.
Did you not hear what he said?
No, I didn't.
Come on, bro,
Sorry.
pay attention.
Too long to hear. Just give me a summary.
Yeah, no, just
but
listen.
on that point, I think, I don't want this to be interrogative. And
I just want to interject
please,
one
please.
thing, because I think it's important. I think, Jordan, you're very kind, and I understand.
Yeah,
I also
this
watched
guy's a Christian, by the way.
Okay,
Muslims,
yeah.
and I thought there were some problems with it, definitely. But when you said there's an elephant in the room that I want to address, my mind immediately went to videos I've seen of you with some of your friends in the street, and suggesting violence and suggesting aggressive actions against other communities, which in the West is something that, let's say, in Canada,
Yeah, the Westerners never commit violence. They never, act like aggressively.
Tell that to the Afghans and to the Iraqis. Maybe they can give a better answer.
You don't even have to go to the Iraqis, man. I mean, like, just look at what happened with like the history of the blacks and the whites.
That's a,
even
oh,
like
you mean
the history of like
yes.
white people
you
and
mean,
like
you mean
Asian
about
people.
the recent riots? I think it happened last year, right? The riots there when the black guy was killed. Yeah, the guy was held down by the police officers, and then there was a big riot in the US. Yeah,
Mhm.
ask them.
Yeah. The Westerners never are violent against these like people, right? Yes. Like, what fantasy land are you living in, man?
Oh my
Canada,
God.
people don't do that. And even though there might be civil conflict, we have a state, we have police, we have an apparatus, which is there to deal, which is not completely perfect, but which is functioning.
Again, like you could clearly see they have like the superiority complex, right? They think that they're the greatest thing ever. They're the best.
They're the best. They're the best thing ever since sliced bread, and nothing else can beat them. See?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the best in the world. In the West is the best.
Yeah, the West is the best.
To
Nothing
install the rules. So when I
nothing is
see
better
someone
than
in the
the
street
rest.
surrounded by men wearing masks,
Yeah.
who are talking about if these other groups.
Yeah, by the way, you want to see a man surrounded by masks? Hold on, let me see if I can find some pictures.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me share something. Yeah, hold on. Okay, let me share the screen. Let's look at some man in masks. Yeah, can you see it? Yeah,
Yeah, it's still loading. Oh, yeah. These people, yeah.
these are some
This
men in
group of
masks.
morons, yeah.
Yeah,
Men
and
in
they're
masks,
still
huh?
active. They're still active.
Yeah, until today, they're still active. This group hasn't gone away.
Yeah,
It's still around. Yeah.
still around. Men in masks. Now,
Yeah,
obviously,
men in
like
masks.
I'm not saying that these things are equivalent, because what happened in like with like Brother Hijab's case is basically a bunch of thugs came out and attacked a Muslim youth, and they went there to protest. And like, what's like, how's that like a bad thing? Like, do you guys not advocate for like free speech? Aren't you guys that are the ones who are not constantly whining about free speech and like protest and all this?
Yeah, exactly.
Then why are you whining about like, Brother Hijab and some Muslims coming out to like protest or like criticize like these people?
come out, we're going to be there, and I'm looking for Jews, and we're talking about blood, and there's these very strange behaviors that I
What
think
we're looking for Jews. You remember that when I said that exact same
I just remember you talking to police about.
Jewish people?
Yeah.
I'd like to get an exact quote. Okay, so I don't remember. I recall.
Well, the one that I definitely saw that you spoke for quite a while was relating to some issues with Hindu.
Right, so what happened recently? I don't want
Yeah,
to.
well, that's, well, I think the reason why it's important, I guess the reason why it's important is that I'm a Christian, very much a Christian. I have many problems with modern Western culture, right? But we are in the West,
Okay.
right? And you are in the West,
Yeah, and I am a Western.
right? You live in the West, and so
And I'm British.
Yes.
Just like you're Canadian.
exactly.
Yes.
And so to me, the elephant in the room is that's part of it. There are many people who told Jordan not to come here because of those videos.
Okay, well, there's a lot of people that told me not to have this conversation with Jordan.
Yeah,
because of his videos.
yeah.
And that's why me and
Lots of
Jordan.
people don't want to have difficult
Exactly.
conversations.
But what I'm saying with Jordan is that what makes him gallant and brave is that despite those voices, that are the voices of disunity, because he's been cancelled more times than I have, yeah? But despite the fact that he's been cancelled in Cambridge University or whatever, I don't care about those institutions. With all due respect, I know this man is
True.
influence. And in my
I agree
estimation,
with this statement.
most influential
Yeah.
Western public. Right. So for that reason, I speak to him. And for that reason, I don't apologize to anyone for doing so. And I think in a way, he sees the same thing in me. Maybe not to the same level. But the fact that I'm half his age, he knows what's going to come in 30 years' time. So he's playing the cards right. And I think at the end of the day, my voice, my emotions, what I'm saying in the streets of London or Leicester or whatever else is how a lot of Muslim people feel. But don't forget, yes, I'm disagreeable. And I'm not, my temperament is not the temperament of the average Muslim. So you've got to differentiate between me as an individual, me, Mohammad Hijab as an individual, and Islam. Do you see? If you say Mohammad Hijab, you are a hypocrite, you are a bad guy, you are violent. So you know what? That's something I have to look into. Do you know what I mean? If that's your advice to me, it's something
Well, I would
have
also
to
say
look into.
there's no moral advantage in being a pushover either.
Yes, I
right?
agree.
And so these things are very hard to calibrate correctly. And so, and if we come at this in a spirit of mutual ignorance, and because
So let me ask you both a question then, since we can talk about, by the way, one clarification before the question. I've never asked for violence. And that's an accusation I think that needs to be, you need to look back at, because I've never said let's go and do violence. I said that if such and such group come out again, which were a group of armed people, then we'll be there to defend the community. I've never said in my whole life, and I'll tell you.
Okay, so I'm gonna react to this portion, and then we're gonna do the last portion where basically Jordan Peterson says why he won't be a Muslim, and then we're gonna end the stream, inshallah, because we want to keep it under 1 hour, and because I actually have to record another stream with Brother MENJ after this, inshallah. So yeah, stay tuned for that. It will come out later. When can people expect it? Bro, you're muted. Yeah, Aki, you're muted.
Sorry,
muted.
I forgot.
Yeah.
I forgot that I muted. Okay, so I'm thinking that maybe I will release it tomorrow. But let's do the recording tonight.
Okay, yeah, sure. Let's continue.
Anybody to find anything that's opposite from what I've just said. Now, that's one thing. Second thing I'll say is this, is that, and if it was a violence issue, if I did say that, what's happening with the Metropolitan Police? Why am I not behind bars? Why there was not been a single investigation? It's 210,000 people have watched the video. Unless the police have put their fingers in their ears, or that they want to accuse the police of negligence or incompetence. That's a different story. Let's go to the second point, because you're saying now about this basically dogmatism. Let's just call it for what it is. Like,
what's pride in dogmatism, right? And that's something we all have to watch, because it's a hard line to walk, because you want to be an advocate for your faith, but what in the world do you know, right? You're ignorant beyond comprehension.
That's a question. And both of you, this is a question to both of you. Is there an ultimate purpose of life?
Yeah, sure.
What is it?
What we're doing here,
Which is it?
hopefully trying to make peace.
Right now.
Why is it so angry? What are you doing here? Make peace. Which is how?
We'll see.
We'll see.
He's not going to make peace by being antagonistic towards Muslims' feelings and thoughts and Western show. He doesn't seem to understand the Muslim worldview, and he doesn't want to understand the Muslim worldview.
Yeah. And the thing is that if you want to make peace with the Palestinians. Make peace with the Palestinians.
Exactly.
The Palestinian children that are
Exactly.
still starving in
Exactly.
Palestine. Make peace with them.
Exactly. Yes, he shouldn't be addressed. Actually, to be more accurate, he shouldn't be talking to other Muslims, because he seems to have an invested interest in Jerusalem, especially. I don't know whether you saw his clip where he mentioned about him storming the Temple Mount or Al-Aqsa. So that was one particular clip where he mentioned about going to the Al-Aqsa compound and
Oh, yeah.
So he should actually be dealing with the Palestinian. He should actually sit down with a Palestinian leader or a Palestinian figure and talk to him and try to rationalize again and come to common understanding with him, because he seems that he has a vested interest in Jerusalem, in Al-Aqsa.
Because
It's better than the alternative.
what's the alternative?
Hell.
Hell. if you don't listen to
Hell.
sit
The way
down
that
and
he
talk
speaks,
to like
the way that he says it, hell.
if you don't like talk to like right-wing figures, you're gonna go to hell.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, we as if right-wing figures can determine whether we go to hell or heaven, right?
Okay.
Which we're toying with. I don't mean us. Well,
Yeah.
us too. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But things are
Also,
shaky.
again, like remember what I said. Like first, he has this like two narrative. Both of these narratives are false. One is that he's acting as if Muslim world and Christian world or the Western world have never interacted intellectually, which is not true. And the second one is that he's acting as if this is the first time this is happening, which is also not true.
Exactly.
Shaky at the moment on many fronts, and we have this opportunity in front of us all.
Or
of us.
he's acting as if like there's this big conflict between like the Muslim and the non-Muslim world, which isn't true. But of course, like there's
No, it's
like
not.
difference in terms of our faith, in terms of our many things. But the thing is that
Yes.
these differences doesn't mean like some kind of big conflict, like geopolitical conflict. Like
Exactly.
for example,
Exactly.
I can pinpoint conflict. So for example, Putin has a conflict with liberalism. He clearly does.
Yes.
There's a clear
Yes.
conflict between Russians and American, right? Or like
Yes.
the Russian kind of geopolitics and American. There's a
Ukrainians.
conflict
Yeah.
there. Yeah. There's a conflict between capitalism and communism or socialism,
Yes.
right?
Socialism, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's no like conflict in terms of like there's this like this big Muslim entity as like this Muslim empire versus this like this big kind of like Western empire which doesn't exist. So it's like a myth,
Exactly.
it's like a conspiracy theory.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, I wish
That's
it
right.
did. I wish it did. I wish we had like
Yeah.
a caliphate and like to scare these
Yeah.
people. But sadly, we don't.
Yeah.
So this is just a
Yeah.
myth. It's a fairy tale.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's continue.
To have a very abundant world, right, where everyone has enough, and maybe more than enough. And we're shaky about that. We're not sure that that's acceptable, and we're not sure everybody should have it. We're not sure everybody deserves it, and even ourselves. And we're retreating into our corners in some real sense.
Yeah, we're turning into our corners. What is he talking about?
We're not addressing the elephants under the carpet. And you
We're
can't.
not doing this. We can't do this. Well, what are you saying? He's inventing.
As if as if
Things
the
we're
world,
discussing.
he's talking as though he has influence over the world leaders and their actions. Do you really think that Joe Biden will listen to him? Do you really think that Putin will listen to him? Do you really think that who's the Rishi Sunak will listen to him? They're not going to listen to him. Okay.
Yeah. And the thing is that like he's acting as if like this kind of like the entire world is like his children. And he's like saying, we're listening to, we're
exactly.
doing this, we're doing badly.
Yep. Exactly.
Brother Realvox says, Realvox, he never be a Muslim because he sees Islam as an antagonist to his Judeo-Christian worldviews. Never say never, Aki. I mean, like, who knows? Maybe Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will guide him. And inshallah, we hope and pray that he becomes
Actually, I
guided.
share similar views with our brother View Dogs, but never mind. I'll reserve that until we actually go to that part where he talks about
Yeah.
Islam,
Yeah.
where Hijab actually posed the question,
Mhm.
and he answered, and how he answered.
Yeah, but the thing is that as Muslims, we should always be hopeful and we should always pray for people so that they may be guided, so that they become
Yeah.
Muslim. And
That's
that's what
true.
we hope, inshallah. So we
course,
pray for him
of
and hope
course.
that he becomes guided.
Contentiously now. They make for rough conversations, but they make for a lot rougher streets if you don't talk them out. And you have to do that in a spirit of ignorance. Like I was hoping to come here today and, well, listen, I talk a lot. There's my flaw, but I don't know how to feel the
A rougher street, like what do you mean by rougher street? Like is like Muslims going out there like fighting like Jordan Peterson fans? Like what are you talking about?
I don't get it either.
right way forward. I think part of it is, well, first of all, to find commonalities, we believe in the fundamental necessity of a uniting book across the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim faiths. That's not nothing. Like, that's
Okay, again, you have to read between the lines. He's promoting again the Abraham Accords. He's trying to make it seem like, look, you guys like support this like Palestinians and whatnot. Let's put that to the side and make deals with like the Israelis, right? That's what he's trying to promote. And he's doing it
see
in
that.
this guise of like sophistry. And this is why I call him
Yeah,
a sophist,
exactly.
because he's using his like this nonsensical kind of like pseudo-intellectual ramblings to justify
Exactly.
something that's clearly unjust. But it is clearly unjust that Palestinians are living in extreme poverty in their own land, right? And you're taking the land away from them. These children and the parents, you're separating them, you're kicking them out, you're putting them in prison or open prison. This is clear injustice, and you're trying to justify that. And there's no justification for this.
Strange thing to insist upon, and yet we all seem to agree. We believe in a higher and purposeful unity, the necessity of that, and then also in the necessity of putting that above all else. And we also agree that we're not very good at that. But that's the hardest one to get, is that even if you do claim in some sense to worship the highest in this monotheistic sense, that doesn't mean you're very good at it. And that's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you're trying to also be a courageous knight of your faith, let's say. It's hard to be properly humble in the face of the divine, but that might be in some sense the proper command. I mean, the fact that Islam means submission is a reflection of that in some sense, right? Just remember who's God here and who isn't. And that's a very hard thing to keep in mind. So when I listen to you, you disagreeable character, I'm trying to separate out the wheat from the chaff, because there's no doubt I have many things to learn, as I learned to some degree.
Honestly, I appreciate this part. Like, I learn from your humility, honestly, the way you come across. And once again, I do appreciate both of you coming here. And I appreciate this humility as well. Like what you said there is good. I deserve the accountability, just like he does. I don't want to be a person who can't dish it out, who dishes out what can't get it himself. I deserve it. What I wanted to say is this to both of you. I want to do a thought experiment, yeah? And so imagine you're going to sleep. I don't know where you're going to stay now. I'll tell you you're staying. You're watching my videos, me with masks and stuff like that before you go to sleep, subscribe to the channel, whatever you do, yeah? And now you're, after you've put the dislike and done your negative comments, which I deleted already, put in the trash, which is what you do with tweets, and we can talk about that later. But after that's all happened, and you've gone to sleep, you both go to sleep now, right? You wake up and you find yourselves on a ship, yeah? And people are eating food, people are drinking, people are this and that, so this is happening. Now, what would be the first questions that you would ask people around you? Would you ask things like, how did I get here? Where are we going? Are these?
Those seem like the first. Those are good questions to ask in general. Where are we? How did we get here?
And this is
where are we going?
That's what I wanted to actually get to, because this is what Heidegger, Mohammad Hijab, he's a controversial figure, right? Okay, but he describes it as the thrownness of life.
Yeah.
Because we're chucked into life, we're thrown into life, right? So the fact now that we're in this world, these questions that we'd be asking if we were on a ship and we're just chucked on a ship are the same very questions, like you said, that we would be asking if we're in this world. Where did we come from? Where are we going? I think if we can't get these two questions right, nihilism will persist. You're a nihilistic expert. You've spoken a lot about nihilism. I think if we can't get those
counter-nihilistic expert.
I'm not a nihilist. If you want, that's what I think my purpose. The purpose is to be united with God.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so from the Islamic perspective, it's this, right? First of all, ask these three questions: where did I come from? Where am I going? What am I doing here? What is the purpose of life? What is it? And the answer is we came from a creator. Okay, so we can approach this in whatever argument you like. I'm doing PhD in continuity. You can do anything you want. You can do, for example, through the fact that the universe is regular and stable and uniform and possesses life. What's the best explanation for that? Is it knowledge or not knowledge? So we say it's knowledge, right? Or is it say creative capacity of some sort? We came from this creative capacity. We came from this knowledge force, right? That's the first thing we say. We came from this force, this higher power. Where are we going? We're going back to the higher power, right? And we're going back to the higher power with our deeds, which we have to be responsible for, which is exactly the hallmark of what you stand for. And that's, I believe, genuinely, that's why you're asking why so many people are listening to you. Because we reject original sin, with all due respect. Original sin says that one man, gave us a sin, the other man took it away. Basically, I mean, we're fallen creatures, and then Jesus, you've got to believe in the sola fide. You believe in whatever you know what.
I'm Orthodox, so I don't believe that.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, fine.
I don't believe in original sin the way you described it. But that's fine.
Fine. No worries. Eastern Orthodox, yeah? Okay, fine. But the issue is that this.
So basically, what Brother Hijab is pointing to is like this idea of understanding the purpose of life, because we all believe that there's a purpose to life, right? As Muslims, we all believe that there's a purpose to our life. But when you don't have that, when you don't have like this religious faith, you don't have a purpose of life, and then that leads to nihilism, right? So it's a very sound argument to say that if you don't have a religious view or a strong view that you can use to justify your existence, then you cannot justify your existence, basically. And that's what he's highlighting. And this is very important because this is going to come back later. Because this question of whether God exists or not, where I came from, is it just accident or not? These things are important. And this is something. This is important. This is because it's going to come back later on, as Jordan Peterson answers why he is not going to be a Muslim. But regardless,
exactly.
I didn't say I believed in it either. I just said that the concept of original sin is an expression of this problem that we're describing, which is that we're all burdened with something approximating, the thrownness and this ambivalent relationship we have with the atrocity of history. And that's worse, because if you study the atrocity of history with any degree of seriousness, you have to take account of the fact that people like you did it. And you might think, well, I wouldn't do it. It's like, I wouldn't be so sure about that.
For sure. I mean, you were talking about you were talking about the suffering. And what was one of the major...
So, again, he's kind of like throwing this kind of like rants. He's saying that if you read history, people like you did it. Like which people are you talking about? Like which part of history are you talking about? Right? I mean, because if you look at the history, most of the devastating wars are by secular people. It's by secularism. Yeah. Muslims didn't bomb nuclear. Muslims didn't commit genocide in Japan. Muslims didn't go to India or subcontinent and made millions of people starve. Muslims didn't do that.
Yeah.
It was your secular liberal empires that did that.
Yes.
So
exactly. Even Muslims didn't go to Malacca and destroy the city. Destroy the empire. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so let's go to the very end where Brother Hijab asks him the question as to would
That's a good one.
Peterson consider
That's a good
becoming a
one.
Muslim?
corrupted. And you can think about them as a microcosm of the world. People were under tremendous stress. And one of the temptations was to become a trustee and participate in the system of oppression. And the camps in Russia could not possibly have sustained themselves if the prisoners weren't running them. And that's something to think about with regards to totalitarianism. And Solzhenitsyn did note, and it was transformative to him, that there were people of genuine religious faith who were immobile in their commitment to ethical action, even in the confines of the camp, even when faced with something like recant or die. And maybe not just you die, maybe your family die, or maybe you die in misery. And one of the things that transformed Solzhenitsyn and then the world, because his book transformed the world in large part, was his observation that this genuine striving to something like clarity of speech and a higher unity could withstand even the catastrophes of the Gulag camps.
I want to ask a question just before we end.
I think like they just indicate me to.
Okay, I just want to ask one last question because I'm interested in both of you in a sense. Yeah, I said that from a Muslim perspective, the question that we're asked to ask is bring the evidence. Yeah, if I were to bring reasonable evidence which would satisfy some kind of probabilistic reasoning that the Prophet Muhammad, we believe is the final prophet, right? That he was a true prophet, would you be willing to become a Muslim?
I wouldn't dispute a priori the idea that Muhammad was a true prophet, but I don't understand what that means. So obviously, so this is the way
I don't understand what that means. Like, which part of being following a prophet do you not understand? Like, which part of that is
No, the
unclear?
question is quite simple, right? Do you believe that if you given evidence Muhammad is a true prophet? He said, I don't deny that Muhammad is a prophet, but I wouldn't deny that a priori the prophet would the Muhammad would be a prophet, but I don't understand what that means. He said that he understood what a prophet means, and at the same time he's also saying he doesn't understand what it means.
Okay, imagine if I said, like, is the cap in your head red? I mean, I wouldn't
Yes.
discount the idea that my cap is red, but I don't know what it means.
I mean, if it's red, it's red. It can't be blue. It can't be black. It's red.
Yeah. I mean, like, imagine if someone asked you, like, are you a man or a woman? I mean, I wouldn't discount the idea that I could either be a man or a woman, but I don't know what that means. I mean, if a lefty answered like that, would you accept it, or would you make like an hour-long documentary?
Of course not. I would laugh. I'll be laughing like so hard. I'll be laughing like on the floor, rolling on the floor. I wouldn't be able to answer after that because I'll be laughing so hard until my lungs crack. Yeah. Oh my God.
This is such a bad response. Like, honestly, this is like a meme. I don't know what that means.
Oh my God, I don't know what that means. I wouldn't discount the idea that Muhammad was a prophet, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I mean, he gave lectures on the Bible. Does the Bible not talk about prophets? Does the Bible not talk about following the prophets or the Israelites following these great figures? Which part of that is hard to understand? I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
Just an absurd response.
Exactly.
I'm going to look at this psychologically again. People are granted revelations, and it's obviously the case, let's speak empirically, that the revelation of Muhammad united a fractious society. And so it was a uniting revelation. Now, how to conceptualize, but it's not a universally uniting revelation, at least not yet, or not now, because we're not all united. So why? Well, maybe.
So basically, he says that the revelation has been sent down to unite the people, but the Muslims are not united and whatnot. But the thing is that whether something is true or not has nothing to do with unity. Like, for example, you can have people.
He's wrong about that. You say the thing is he's wrong about that because for the first 300 years, the Salaf, we were united. Okay.
Yeah.
It was only after that. It was only after that period where everything starts to crumble because we were starting to leave the religion. We were just Muslim in name, but we weren't following the true religion. That is why we are now not united. But if you look at Muslim history for the first 300 years, especially for the first 3 generations, Muslims were united, 100% united, because all they did was to obey the Prophet.
And even now, Muslims are united, because the thing is that in terms of our faith, we all believe in the same thing. We all, like, for example, the reason I talk about Palestinians, the reason I talk about Palestinians, I haven't met a Palestinian, and yet my heart bleeds for them because they're my brother in faith.
Yes.
So we are united in that sense.
Yes,
there's
exactly.
this
And I love Al-Aqsa, and I love
Al-Aqsa.
I love Jerusalem as much as a Palestinian would. Okay, I would love to bleed and die for Palestine and for Jerusalem especially. Even though I've never stepped foot in Jerusalem, I've never stepped foot in Al-Aqsa, I've never stepped foot in the Haram al-Sharif compound. But I love Haram al-Sharif, the Haram al-Sharif compound with all my heart and all my soul. Okay, I would. That is why I would empathize with a Palestinian as well. Okay.
Yeah. Would Jordan Peterson see this kind of unity among like his like Western kind of
Exactly.
like I don't know, like right-wing figures? Would a right-wing Nazi like agree with like a right-wing feminist? No, like you not see
He
this
will
type of
probably,
unity.
you know what he will answer. He'll say something like this. Oh, I know what this unity means, but I know what this unity is, but I don't understand what it means.
Oh god.
Oh my god.
So and that's the thing. Like if you look at the Islam as a faith, it's such a beautiful faith because it unites people of completely different
Exactly.
backgrounds. Like for example, the
Exactly.
reason I'm even talking to you, a person sitting in Malaysia while I'm sitting in
Exactly.
Bangladesh, right? That
Exactly.
itself shows how much Islam brings
That
people
shows
together.
how much united we are in under
Yeah.
one religion, Islam. I mean,
Yeah.
your culture is totally different from mine. Okay, I don't speak
Yeah.
the same language as you do. Okay, I don't
Yeah.
eat the same food as you do.
Yeah.
But the reason we are brothers is because we believe in the same God, the one true God, and the same prophets, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so like this idea that there's this big fraction. Now, of course, there are fractions within the Sunni, like
Yeah,
on in terms of like
you
smaller
cannot deny
things.
there are fractions. I mean,
Yeah.
right now,
But the
even
thing
in
is, but the
Malaysia,
thing
we
is,
are
but the-
we are heading for elections, and of course, there are fractions between the Muslims here, even okay, political wise. Okay,
yeah,
but
but
that
in
doesn't
terms of
mean that
faith,
we will
in
not.
terms of
Yeah.
faith,
Mm.
and that is where the unity comes. In terms of faith, no one
Exactly.
disagrees. The Sunnis are
Exactly.
united, and the Sunnis are the majority.
Exactly.
Of course, we have differences
Exactly.
with like the Shias, but even with Shias, we can agree on some things, right? So this idea that there's this big fraction in the Muslim world is also not true. There's
Yeah.
because the thing is, what he's doing
He's
is
painting.
that
You say Jordan Peterson is painting a narrative of something that is not true and does not exist in the Muslim world. That's all.
yeah. The thing is
pretty
that
much
I can look at Africa and I can empathize with my brothers in Africa because they're Muslim.
Yes.
Like they're like my own brothers.
Exactly.
But the thing is that if you look at like this Westerners or Western liberal philosophy,
That's
they will
right.
not empathize. It doesn't teach you to empathize like that. What it does teach
Exactly.
is that like
Exactly.
everyone should be equal, but equality doesn't mean the same. Like it doesn't bring unity in that sense.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
you're still treating like for example, they have this idea of minority equality, right? So the minority
Yes.
has to be equal,
Right.
but in order to try to achieve that, it's creating more conflict. Like for example,
Yes.
like if you look
That's
at
right.
like the black rights movement or like
Yeah.
and now as a response to the black rights movement, you have this white
Yeah.
nationalist trash coming up, right? So this is
Exactly.
clearly creating more disunity rather than unity. Or if you look
Exactly.
at like the Muslim world, by removing this idea, materialistic nonsense ideas, we're able to unite on our belief in our Aqidah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right?
That's
And
right.
that's where
That's
true
right.
unity comes in. So this idea is
True.
absolutely
True.
false.
Yeah, I don't know what planet is he from, but he like I said before at the beginning of the stream, he doesn't know what the Muslim world is.
Yeah.
We didn't understand the revelation part.
But
That's one possibility.
is the presupposition what you're saying that unity is the ultimate objective?
Well, not exactly, because then you have the problem of uniformity that you
No,
pointed out.
even the idea of unity itself. I mean, is there
Well, we
not-
talked about, okay, so
No,
we
unity is a
talked
great.
about-
Just to be clear,
yeah.
I believe that unity is a great objective,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's the defining one. For example, if there is an injustice that is so great that this unity is more appropriate, then I can imagine situations where this unity is probably better than unity.
Right.
I'm sure you can. So, for example, like
Well,
so
that would be a false unity in
Yeah,
some
yeah,
sense,
exactly.
right?
So that's
Well,
what
that's why you wanted to address the elephant under the
Yeah,
right
yeah,
away. We
exactly.
can't have a false peace.
Exactly.
And we can't incorporate things we can't yet incorporate.
And another thing is that just because there is disunity between people on some areas doesn't necessarily mean that thing that they're following is itself is not palpable or it's not it's not good for society, right? Like for example, people, even scientists among themselves, they disagree. That doesn't make the science wrong or false or that doesn't mean that science should be rejected or whatever, right? So yeah.
Yes, and the reason I'm bringing this to your attention is because I feel like it's my duty as a Muslim, especially in the mosque, right, to tell you that as Muslims, we believe that the previous dispensations, as they were like Christianity and Judaism, they are part of our faith in a sense. Not in the sense of believing the doctrines and all that kind of thing. Like, we obviously don't believe in original sin or the resurrection, the crucifixion, all this kind of thing. We don't believe in any of that. Or the Trinity, of course. But in the sense that we do believe in Jesus Christ, we believe in all of the Old Testament prophets, most of them, if not all of them, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and so on. And we believe that each prophet was sent with two things: the message, which is to believe and worship
So
one God.
if you notice, the way Hijab is kind of dismantling his argument is by showing that we do have similarities. And because he's trying to paint this picture, there's this big dissimilarity between Muslims and non-Muslims, and Muslims are infighting. And he's refuting him by showing, but what about these similarities? Right? And
Yes,
what
what about
these
similarities,
similarities that even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran, right?
Exactly.
The similarities that we have.
Yeah, but there's no problem with how Brother Hijab is presenting Islam, because this is exactly how Allah Subhanahu wa Taala presents Islam to us. So it's exactly, he's following the Quranic guidance, Brother Hijab.
Yeah.
And some kind of evidence to indicate their truthfulness. So, with, for example, Moses and Jesus, we know what the miracles are playing the scene. And we believe that actually happened historically, right? And we have no qualms with that. We don't have this kind of materialistic viewpoint on the issue. With Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we believe that because he was sent to all of humanity.
If
he had to have-
anything, Christians, especially right-wing Christians or like Jews, have more in common with the Muslims than they have with their own kind of like atheist, kind of like liberal counterparts.
Exactly, but even with Hindus, but if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
look at the internet right now, the Islamophobic industry especially, you will find that they ally themselves with atheists and and Hindus and so-called ex-Muslims like a pussy. Okay,
Yeah.
so these are the people that Christians, those who claim to be Christians, ally themselves with. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
have an evidence base that would satisfy not just the eyes. In other words, it wouldn't be just something that can be witnessed. It would be something that can be interrogated and scrutinized for all times and places. So it would be an auditory revelation. In this case, the Quran. The Quran means a recitation. Yeah. So the central message of the Quran is tawheed, or the idea of worshiping one God and believing in one God, as we mentioned. But there is an attempt in the Quran to challenge, like for example, there's something called the falsification test or the inimitability test. The Quran says, for example, that try and find a contradiction within the Quran. Had it been from other than God, we would found many contradictions. This inimitability challenge is to produce something as sophisticated as it in terms of the linguistic composition as well as the structural component. This is very interesting because now even Western academics like Angelica Neuris and others have said that this challenge has not been met. So a German Orientalist, she's recently said this. So this is another thing. And then you have a range of prophecies, for example. Like if you look at Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 21, it's mentioned in the Bible that one of the hallmarks of a true prophet is that, or a false prophet, is that when they talk about the future, that will be false. But the Quran makes very specific prophecies about the future. For example, in chapter 30, verse 2 to 4, it says, that the Romans had been defeated. At that time, there was a Sassanid Empire, the Roman Empire, and they were in war with each other.
Actually,
and that from 3 to 9 years,
I actually made a video on this, making a very sound argument to show why Islam is true or why Prophet Sallallahu was a prophet of God based on this prophecy. You guys can check out that video, inshallah. Let's continue.
Defeat the enemy, you see? It gave very specific timelines. It gave very specific, and this was a very risky type of prediction, because if you got it wrong, then it would endanger and undermine the entire prophet of Muhammad. But it did happen. In fact, you'll find historical things which are not even the Quran.
Rome was defeated?
The Persians, that the Romans had been defeated by the Persians in a battle. Yeah, and so it's mentioned, for example, the Chronicles of Theophanes, which is the primary source material outside of the Quran Sunnah. You can find it now, even translated into English. He clearly mentions that 8 years after this particular prediction took place, it did happen like that. So we have a range of predictions, even that relate to the current day. The Prophet said that the barefooted Arab, they will be competing for the highest building. That sexually transmitted diseases would be proliferated as a result of people having intercourse outside of marriage, and that this would be something that would be diseases that had never been there in the past. The interest-based economy that we live in is mentioned by the Prophet. Said in the future, interest will be everywhere. Whoever does not consume it, he will not be able to evade its dust. So this is another thing. So for example, you've got a range of prophecies where Islam will spread country by country. Where this mentions he's going to go. There's a hadith that says, the earth has been expanded for me. As west points and east points. And my nation will reach its points, what was projected in east and west. If you look at the Islamic expansion, I mean, Barnaby Rogerson, who is a historian, he said that the similitude of the Muslims going eastward and westward and conquering the amount of countries that they conquered in that early period, which you can read in the book like Gunyu, is like Eskimos taking over Russia and America. That's what he said, Barnaby Rogerson. On the point of prophecies, even people like Edward Gibbons, they agree that the prophecies of the Quran had been met.
So I have to ask.
Yeah.
So I don't understand the question exactly.
He wants to know if you'll convert to Islam.
No, I'm saying that. No, that wasn't.
So look, I would say to some degree, it's not.
I don't understand the question exactly. Like which
I
part of the
don't
question is
understand the
confusing?
question. Yeah. I mean, it's simple English, Jordan. I mean, it's simple English, Dr. Jordan. I mean, it's not something. It's not rocket science, right?
Like, he's basically saying it's so simple, in simple terms. Like, would you consider becoming a Muslim if we gave you the evidence?
Yeah.
And
It's
said,
either
"I don't
yes or
understand
no,
the question.
right?
What do you mean by the evidence? What do you
No,
mean
the answer is either a yes or a no. It's really that simple, right? Oh my god.
Again, this is why I call this guy a sophist, because this is what sophists do. They try to evade and use all this
my
mental
God.
gymnastic to answer simple questions.
Yes, exactly.
Not up to me.
No,
In some
my
sense-
question was, just to remind you, the question was, if I gave you evidence that would satisfy a certain level of probabilistic.
No.
So you wouldn't.
No, because that isn't how I evaluate the situation.
How would you evaluate it? This is the
Well, I'm Muslim enough to have been invited to your mosque.
No, you always invite.
No, but I mean this specifically. I mean this very specifically. I don't think in some sense it's a very complicated problem.
Okay.
He thinks that
You know,
he's
when
Muslim
people
enough
meet
to
me on the
enter a
street,
mosque.
they'll say things like, I met a couple of Orthodox Jews in New York, and they said to me on the street that they call me rabbi, which was it's a hell of a thing to hear, And so, and then I have Muslim people who are listening to my biblical lectures, and
More than
they
that,
say,
by the way, yeah.
yes, more than that, and they say, well, Peterson doesn't know it yet, but he's really a Muslim, and that's very, that's an honor, Just like it was an honor to be approached by these Orthodox Jews, and that hasn't only happened once. And I've had lots of correspondence with people, and the same thing has happened with Orthodox Christians, and to some degree the Catholics, and lesser so the Protestants. And so I don't know exactly what to make of that. We talked about this a little bit, and let's talk about proof. Well, for me, the proof of faith is the attractiveness of its adherents, and that's something to think about, right? Well, are you a shining example of the Muslim faith? Well, how hard do you shine?
So, just to demonstrate how stupid that point was, let me give you guys an analogy, right? Imagine brother MENJ comes to me and says that, do you know that you have a mother? And I said to him, why you ask me that question? That's so rude.
Yeah.
Because you're rude, I must not have a mother. Really, I don't have a mother because you're rude.
Oh my god. Okay, that's weird. Then you just admitted that you have no that. Oh my god. Okay,
I mean,
fine.
whether a people follows how they behave has nothing to do with whether their position is correct or not. Like
Exactly.
this is a logical fallacy. It's known as appeal to common belief. Appeal to common
Yeah,
belief is a
that's right.
common fallacy.
That's right. That's
I
right.
don't think I have the yeah, I don't have the animation, but this is a well-known logical fallacy. Because the thing is that you cannot judge Islam based on its adherence. Same way you
Exactly.
cannot judge adherence based on the religion, because people can always misinterpret. They can always
Yeah.
take things the wrong way. But that being said, of
Exactly.
course, in general, of course, like there will be certain things that Muslims will or Muslims should behave in a way that is aligned with Islam, right? So from that point of view, even then he's wrong, because in the past I've shown this. There are studies that show that Muslim countries, some of the most charitable countries in the world. For example, if you look at Indonesia, has become number one in giving the most amount of charity during COVID, and countries like Japan, which is a non-Muslim, atheist, kind of secular country, is at the very bottom, and this happened during the pandemic. So, and there are many other countries. There are like 3 to 4 countries in that list, and this is all happening in countries that are even in Africa, in African countries. They are really high in charity, even more so than the countries like China and like these all developed kind of like secular countries. So clearly, even from that point of view, he's wrong, because Muslims are charitable, Muslims are kind. But the thing is that even if they weren't for some reason, that still doesn't mean anything. I mean, imagine if I said that some scientists come to me and says that, oh, did you know that the Earth is round? And I look at the scientist and why you again, like you're I don't like your behavior. The Earth must not be round. Then it's so dumb.
That's ridiculous. That's so dumb. I mean, it doesn't change the fact that the Earth is still round, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Same way, just because Peterson, even if this was the case that Muslims are rude or whatever, and Peterson saw that Muslims being rude to him, that still wouldn't mean anything in terms of whether Islam
Wouldn't
is true
change
or
the
false.
truth. However, yeah, it wouldn't determine whether Islam is true for just by the behavior of Muslims. Okay.
Yeah. Like, for example, there are many, for example, if tomorrow he meets a LGBTQ activist who's really nice, would he then accept like their position? No.
Exactly.
Would that mean that there's no such thing as a man or a woman? It's
What
just a
if he meets
construct.
what if he meets a rude heterosexual? Okay, so someone who's very pro hetero, and then he's very rude to him. Oh, it means that heterosexuality may not be true because I don't like your behavior.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Or how about this? A Nazi, let's say that a Nazi comes to you and says that he's really nice, he's be kind to you. Oh, Nazism
Exactly.
must be real. The Indo
Yeah,
like
be
Aryan
real.
race must be superior.
Yeah, it's okay. Oh, speaking of which, I remember in one of regarding his daughter. Okay, when she was talking to Apusi, she said that she didn't like Hijab's behavior. He said that Hijab was aggressive, or he was trying to. I think she was just implying that Hijab was rude or something like that. Because you have to admit, Hijab's way of presentation during that interview or that talk with her,
Hmm.
regarding Ayan Hesiari was a bit aggressive.
Hmm.
And then he said, "Oh, Ayan Hesiari was so nice, was so quiet, was so humble. She doesn't know who Ayan Hesiari really is." You see, so just because of that, Mikhaila Peterson thinks that Ayan Hesiari has more truth than Hijab. That's a stupid position, right?
Yeah.
Just because Ayan Hesiari presented herself so calm, nice, doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Imagine.
it just tells me
Okay,
that
I just thought of a
that
joke. Right? Imagine if
yeah,
like
yeah, right.
Einstein went to like a shop somewhere, and Einstein he like farted in public, and the people then wrote a paper saying that Einstein farts in public. His theory has been proven false.
Exactly. So yeah, this kind of arguments are just stupid, right? So it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's a fallacy. It's fallacious argument.
Yeah.
Now
exactly.
that is now that all that being said, of course, behavior is part of our religion. It's part of our deen. Of course, if you're a Muslim, you have to be in your best behavior. And the truth is, sometimes we cannot always, behave the way the Prophet ﷺ would behave. And we sometimes see this even now. Like, there's a lot of drama going on YouTube between Muslims and infighting. But the thing is that we always, at least most Muslims that are, generally follow their religion the best that they can. You'll see these people are very kind. And I've seen, like, the thing is that I live in a secular country. And whenever I see religious people and students of madrasa and whatnot, and they've been so nice and so kind and like way kinder than some of the kids that are doing secular politics, going around drinking and clubbing and doing all this other kind of things. You can clearly see the contrast between like these two groups of people. Again, this is not to say that Muslims are perfect, but at least you can see the clear contrast. Like the type of deviance you will see in the Western countries are not something you will see in the Muslim world. You can't even think of it, right?
Yep, exactly. Oh, brother, sorry, I have a phone call. Hang on, right?
Oh, by the way, I was just going to end the stream. So how many of you guys are here? Brother Real Log says, he just said that I don't like Muslims as a group of people. Yeah, I mean, that's I mean, I don't know if he's saying that exactly, but he's trying to say that, Muslims are being rude to me because, I said that you should support Israel and whatnot. Maybe that's what he's trying to say. But yeah, he is being very condescending, and that's very true. And this is something you'll notice with like, Peterson, because he's just he's just like this. But anyway, yeah, I think I should probably end this stream. It's been more than 1 hour. I don't know if I should wait for brother MENJ. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna end the stream here. Andrew Box says hijab is dead wrong. Jordan is not a literalist Christian. Yeah, he's not. So basically, Peterson follows Origen. Origen was a very early church father who tried to use analogies to justify his interpretation of his religious text. So yeah, I think I'm gonna end this in this stream. Inshallah, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys for joining us. Bye bye. Jazakallah khair, bro. So we'll see you guys next time, and thank you guys for watching. If you guys wanna like the video, like, share, and subscribe, and if you wanna support us, then you can support us on Patreon, or support us on like becoming a YouTube member. And yeah, inshallah, see you guys next time. Jazakallah khair. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.